in the background because it's always that delay. But welcome, 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 everybody, to the Mike Lead Aspire session today. I'm Mary Cheney, if you did not know. And I have a wonderful guest with me today. And I, Vita and I go back, goodness gracious, has it been a decade? Has
I
it
think it might be.
really?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think that's about that. Yeah, that's about right. We've known each other for a while, and Vita is also on the Mike board of directors and on my personal board of directors. And my goodness, it's a pleasure to have you here with us just to talk through your career, right? And the Mike Lead Aspire sessions are essentially sessions that are designed to talk about origin stories
Hmm.
and really, and then what we do in this profession, because a lot of the folks that are in this group, they don't necessarily know what it may look like. And I know we just have an hour, and your career is vast. You're on that 30 plus years of experience like I am. But
Yeah.
we're gonna go back. We're gonna go back. We're gonna have some fun. We're gonna have some fun. And so I'm gonna start and let you tell us your origin story. Introduce yourself and tell us how you got into cybersecurity.
Well, of course, I'm Veda Woods, and I actually stumbled into this. And I think when we started, there was not really anything such as cyber security per se, as a layman. Early on, of course, I've always been interested in technology, the arts specifically. So back in the day, I wanted to be a graphic illustrator, and was really interested in the technology behind it. Was fascinated by just the creative expression. Went to the Art Institute of Chicago briefly, got my feelings hurt because I didn't understand what it meant about constructive criticism. And so I didn't have that word called mentor back in the day. So I didn't realize that was part of the process. But I said, well, not sure if this is really where I want to be. Let me try to figure it out. And because my family, a lot of the women in my family have been in healthcare, and for my own personal situation, I thought perhaps I would go into healthcare as well. And I like helping people. So I thought perhaps occupational therapy. And, those dreams were dashed quickly when I took a tour of a trauma unit in a major hospital. And I realized, I'm like, I don't think this is for me. And during this time period, right, this is early on in the career where you're in school. You're trying to figure it out. I was a working student, so I was still trying to figure out really like where my place was per se. And someone said, hey, they're hiring in the government. And that's kind of how it all started from there. I just filled out an application. Looking back on it, I can see where there was an interest because it was someone that, of course, had the technology background, but they also had a variety of other backgrounds as well, to include healthcare and in the arts and things of that nature. So it's interesting when I reflect back on how this journey has actually been, because back in the day, I wouldn't have never thought there would even be a connection between the two. But fast forwarding, I ended up landing my first role at the Federal Bureau of Investigations, Washington field office, as a little baby data analyst. And I was there, and it's really was eye-opening for me during that time period, because the squads at the time were focusing on a variety of different issues, and they ended up placing me on a pharmaceutical healthcare fraud squad. So that's how they made that connection. And while I was there, I had an awesome supervising special agent who kind of let me wander around and be nosy a little bit. And I stumbled across another squad, and this was in the early 90s. And they were focused on child exploitation on the internet. And I was like, what are they talking about? And some of the cases that they actually were looking at reflected where I come from, which is south side of Chicago. So I was floored by this, and I was like, wow, you mean to tell me people are like, they moved up in the world, and they're taking women and children and they're selling them on Craigslist. And I'm like, okay, I need to understand a little bit more about what this is about. And that's how I got into this thing that we call cyber. It was really from a social aspect, looking at, technology, and looking at how we can actually leverage cyber in particular, to have and drive social impact. And that's where it all started. It didn't start, with a computer or anything like that. It just started by seeing the need to be able to help. And fast forward from there, the career ended up from the Bureau, went into national security, was there for quite a bit with our three-letter agencies. had a lot of fun there. That's where I like to say I had my, I honed my skills and really began to truly understand why we were doing what we were doing in the first place. And so it was always mission focused. You know, it's about protecting our civil liberties as people. It was looking at how we were moving rapidly from physical warfare into virtual warfare, all that fun stuff, right? And I really grew a lot within that. And then lo and behold, I went and applied for, you know, like we do, we apply for roles, right? And applied for a role and went on an interview. And I'll never forget it. I went on this interview. It was not even a half a block away from the White House. And I went into this nice building full of attorneys. It's a beautiful building. And I interviewed for a role with two gentlemen. And at the time, I didn't really understand whether or not I got the role or not. I was just happy for the opportunity. For me, it was just like, man, I got an opportunity, because the more I interviewed, the more confident I felt. And it was just wonderful for me to think that, wow, you know, these caliber of people want to interview, you know, little old me. And I had an opportunity. 9-10 months later, I got a call. And this is a government role that I went for. So government's a little slow. I got a call and they said, hey, you know, congratulations, you know, you're now the CISO for agency. And this agency happened to be an appointed agency up underneath former President Obama. And I was brought on board as their political appointee. So that was a turning point for me. It was a big step because it was very different on that side of the world versus the closed side of the world. And the level of responsibility and strategic decision-making became greater because I realized very quickly, having the books in front of me and, you know, and making sure I'm going through my checklist and making sure everything is where it needs to be. And they need to make sure they get everything in order. All of that got thrown out the window when I went on the civilian side of government, especially from the executive level. That went a whole nother arena. And I actually was quite perplexed because I'm like, how am I supposed to manage in this when where, you know, I know what my role is supposed to be. But I have all these folks that are sitting at the table. At the time, they were IGs across government, and they were the ones that have to make the decisions, and they could care less about my security, right? They wanted to make sure that we were meeting the objectives of the business. And so that was a turning point. And I really began to leverage what we call, and MiC instills, in terms of mentoring sponsors. And that's when it became truly, truly important, because although I may have had the technical acumen and I was more than qualified for the role, I didn't have the exposure to that level of people. I didn't understand the politics. I didn't understand the bad conversations. And I needed to get up to speed really, really quickly. And through that, I served from 2009 to 2015. The agency sunsetted. So I'm one of the few people in the world that have been at the birth of an agency and the death of an agency. And I ended up being recruited into the financial sector, worked a couple of years at Capital One, and then swiftly went over to Morgan Stanley. And Morgan Stanley was attractive to me because it was, in my eyes, a level on par with government in terms of the expanse and challenges of responsibility. And I'm always looking for things that other people don't want to do or that are hard, because, you know, that keeps our brains moving, right? And I spent almost 5 years in corporate at Morgan Stanley, and I was responsible for their threat intelligence, vulnerability management oversight, as well as their firm-wide policies, and making sure that we were establishing something called second line operational risk as it relates to threat intel and vulnerability management. That was fascinating. You know, working with global regions is very, very different than government, of course, in the private sector. But I wasn't fulfilled, right? Because what I learned about financial services, and no offense to all of those that in financial services, woo-hoo, no offense. But for me, being a purpose-driven person and mission-focused, from an ethics standpoint and just my mindset, it was really, really challenging for me. And I felt suffocated. And I didn't feel like I could be able to truly be able to express the things that I need to express. And to be fair, in the world of wealth management, nobody cares about that. They care about making money, right? Generating wealth. And so I learned that quickly. And throughout this entire time, right, when it all started at the Bureau years ago, I had stood up my little baby nonprofit. And this little baby nonprofit, everybody that knew me knew Veda talks about this constantly. You know, I was going to the schools, I'm talking to the kids, the things that I had learned in the law enforcement federal arena about what's really happening in terms of our safety and our children's safety became apparent based on the cases that I would come across and talking with the agents and talking with the law enforcement community. And it was getting worse and worse and worse. It wasn't getting better. And so for me, that was always something to help me maintain my purpose while I'm in this corporate world, right? And that little nonprofit grew into what it is now, which is Protect Us Kids Foundation. And it's global entity with global regions, and really focused on protecting young people from not rural, but protecting young people in rural and marginalized communities from online child sexual exploitation and sex trafficking. And then and Mary, you know this because I've been crying to you at night for the past we'll make it 1 year, actually, May 6th. We launched a subsidiary to Protect Us Kids, which is a for-profit social enterprise called Global Cybersecurity Advisory Group. And again, purpose-driven, right? Always trying to understand, not just being a prevention type of entity, right? We know there's the issue and we're providing resources and tools, but really trying to go to the root of the issue, which is what cyber folks do, right? We're trying to understand the why and understand how we can solve the issue and not necessarily the symptom. And it's the same thing in the child protection space, right? The way we utilize technology and social media and all that fun stuff, and the direction that we've gone, humans are behind that. And so there's a lot involved in that other than just the security controls that we put on the system. And so that moved me to be able to create that subsidiary, GCS Advisory Group, to really bring like-minded cybersecurity organizations and academia together to think about ways of how you can leverage cybersecurity for sustainable impact, meaning not just worried about ourselves and protecting ourselves or whatever we think is precious to ourselves, but understanding the impact that it has on our environment socially and from a governing entity. What does that look like when it comes to cyber? Because cyber has a huge influence. And a lot of the things that are going on in the world right now, it would be wonderful. And we really want to drive cybersecurity professionals to be at the table talking about that. And yeah, I'm watching the time. So yeah, that's
it's so good. We're chilling. It's Friday night. We got an audience. We got some folks out there. We're chilling. No, and it's about that passion, right? And that purpose and understanding way back when you defined it as something that you wanted. It was mission oriented, it's mission focused, right? And that taking that desire to be mission focused and turning it into a profession, because of course we talk to the aspirers and the apprentices all the time about what area of cybersecurity they want to go into. And I don't think any of them have ever thought about the fact that of utilizing their talents to prevent some of the things that go along in our communities, in rural and marginalized communities. And so if you have that drive, there's still a component of that, right? And at the conference, you talked about cyber sustainability, right? And cybersecurity's role in sustainability. You wanna draw in on that a little bit and
Yes.
what that looks like?
Yes, so this is the new chapter, right? Really trying to influence the discipline of cyber to where it started, right? Which was about protecting us and protecting people. And so I think we've heard people or read things in terms of like sustainable cybersecurity. You have to sustain things. Cybersecurity sustainability is a little bit different. So let me define what might be a little bit more well understood, which is sustainable cyber. When you're talking about sustainable cybersecurity, you're really focused internal focused. So you're focused on the processes and the procedures. You're focused on your policies. You're focused on those controls that you have in place in your environment, and you're focusing on ways to ensure that the implementation and execution of those controls work as intended, as it pertains internally to your organization. You might be concerned about a few suppliers here and there, those that are close to you, But for the most part, you're focused on trying to have sustainable operations to support our favorite word, resilience, right? To support resilience in our systems and in protecting, the things that are most invaluable to us with our organizations. And that's fantastic. But there's a huge gap in terms of understanding that we don't really truly, as much as we might think we do, work in silos, right? And so when you look at organizations and companies and they are talking about being resilient and they're speaking about what they can offer, what they have, or how they're going to protect something, it's typically very inward focused and not necessarily focused on all of those dependencies that all organizations and companies have on one another, to include the biggest entity, which is a community, right? Nobody can make money if the community is not there to purchase or to buy, if that supply is not there. I don't care what entity you are, you need people, right? And so, but for some reason, we tend to put them last, because we're focused on the next, shiny bells and whistles in terms of technology, or we're focused on making sure we can say that we can cure everything, with every little angle and every little toy that we can think of, right? Nothing is, trust me, and Mary, you know this, we're both tech geeks. We love technology. It's fantastic. It's amazing what we're able to do with it. But what we haven't necessarily taken attention to is truly understanding what happens in the event that we are creating something and we release it to the wind, and then we have no idea of the impact of what's going to happen. And most importantly, we're so focused on fixing the issue, we don't even understand how to sustain ourselves as we go through an event or an incident, right? We really don't. And yes, we have business continuity and disaster recovery, but what does that tend to focus on? Oh, your critical assets. So what do you define as critical, right? And again, what critical assets don't function on nothing. All of those things that you deem not critical is what's supporting those critical assets. So if you don't really think about in terms of what will happen if things did not work as intended within my organization, with my business, or even with my own personal affairs, how am I supposed to be able to sustain myself while I try to figure out what the heck just happened? And, time is of the essence. And so this gap that's between being, proactive and buying all of the controls or implementing all the controls, and then, we're going to be resilient and we're going to go immediately towards, threat hunting and responding, but we have no idea again about the middle piece. This is where the challenge lies, and where there's a lot of opportunity in terms of getting, especially cybersecurity professionals, in line with understanding what does it truly mean to be sustainable. Cybersecurity sustainability is simply all of those things I talked about, internal facing, but it's just truly understanding how you can apply that towards it having a significant social impact on the community. And what does that look like? And how can you measure the effectiveness in respect to the controls that you put in place and the products and services that you provide? And so you're thinking about things outside of yourself, right? And you're making decisions so that hopefully you're being more thoughtful in your approach, because in the long run, making those type of decisions and thinking from a sustainable lens ensures that you actually make more money, because you can, profit for purpose. You can make profit and still have a purpose at the same time. And in essence, you're also creating a foundation that's scalable and that can sustain itself over time. You're not just thinking about self. And in the world of cyber, you can't think about self. There's too many dependencies that's flying around. And it's important for organizations and for folks in cyber to really start thinking outside of the box of the system and the device, and really looking like, well, how exactly are we actually utilizing this particular product or this technology? And what are all the ways in which something could actually go awry if it's not working the way it's intended to work? And just asking those questions lends a world of opportunities, especially for cybersecurity professionals, to come in with a very interesting, unique way of how to apply problem-solving skills and being able to be very distinct and succinct in terms of their analysis, because they are thinking outside the box. Our adversaries think like that all the time. That's why they're able to do what they do. They're not working within a prescribed mindset or methodology. They're looking at what we're doing and they're thinking about all the ways where they can exploit that. We need to be thinking about, well, yeah, what are all those ways? And if they do exploit that, how will that actually have an impact on our organization and the community as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, when we were at the conference, of course, you live in the Baltimore area, and we had that incident where the unmanned barge destroyed a bridge. We still haven't had a conversation about how traffic is like right now, but we won't get into that right now. And we had an interesting conversation about whether or not we are prepared as a country. We're just diving into AI, and then it's just crazy. I mean, we're just accepting that this is the next best thing, and this is gonna. Nobody seems to be understanding when you swallow that pill whole, you're taking it, you're taking putting trust into the people behind it that put it together. Because again, the machines don't run themselves. We run the machines. We have control over the machines, but it doesn't seem to me, as we discussed, that we as cyber professionals, or even we as a country or as a whole, when it comes to cyber warfare, are thinking about the fact that the hackers is wild, wild west. They can do whatever the heck they want to do. And we can think technology is gonna solve a problem, but that's not necessarily the case, right? And so those warning signs, those warning signals of we water, we talked about that as well. Water insecurity in regards to just the attack vector, there are a lot of there are not a lot of people. I got it. A lot of people looking at critical infrastructure as a way to get into the cybersecurity profession. Of course, these are aspirers. So this is one of those things that we really need to be thinking about, because poisoning a water supply, especially if if it's just machines and you don't have a person pressing that button, can be a danger to communities as a whole, as you spoke about.
Absolutely. And it's so funny because, we have, again, we're in a very interesting position in us folks in cybersecurity, because our playing field and real world scenarios are happening right in front of us. And this is the part where I get a little frustrated with our peers in this industry, because we seem to be so distracted. And that distraction is real. There's something, to the thing called psychological warfare and what that really means, right? And it's not science fiction. It's actually been going on for quite some time. And understanding that the internet is only 28 years young. Here in the US specifically, the rate of rapid social change is like unbelievable. In the past 5 to 10 years, it's like night and day. And you're watching this change, and you're watching the things in terms of how people are perceiving information, how they deem certain types of information as important, as not important, how that information is being disseminated, that digital data, right? Because when we think of data, right, I think sometimes us in cybersecurity world, we kind of focus on like the systems and things of that nature. Actually, what you're consuming on social media is nothing but data. It's distinct in that it's a type of data, whether it's coming visually or whether you're inputting that information in, when you're typing in your information in Google, the wonderful word of Google, or you're going on chat sites, or you're purchasing stuff offline, or you're doing Instacart or the app on your phone, right? We're pouring in all of this information, and we don't necessarily understand the reality from fantasy when we make decision making and what we're looking at. This is something that cybersecurity professionals should be at the table and very much concerned about. Like, we should be speaking about these things, because it is a huge detriment, and it's already occurring when you think about the effects that it's having on people. I don't care what people say about AI or anything else. Look, we were like this with the scientific calculator. Remember back in the day when it came out, Mary, and the schools and everybody was going to boycott, that the children were going to fail?
Wait a minute, I think I got one. Wait a minute.
The scientific calculator. Remember, they were like, oh, you can't use that. That's cheating, blah, blah, blah. Now you have to have that as part of your education, your courses and your classes. You must have a scientific calculator. This is how I feel about AI. I feel like it's something, but the difference with AI is that there's no perimeters around that. At least I could turn the scientific calculator off or take the battery out, and I don't have to use it. With AI, it's an interesting evolution that's happening so rapidly. And the means in which that it can exploit is like off the chain. And that's the part where I feel like cybersecurity professionals need to rise up a little bit and understand the playing field of what we're dealing with, right? Again, yes, you go out on your job, you're working on your job, you're applying your skills in that organization. But you need to be looking at this in everyday life. All of us leverage technology in everyday life. So the significance of impact in terms of something, for example, the situation that happened in Baltimore City, it's fascinating to me, right? And yes, there's a lot of theories I watched online as there was a big push to make sure that people have their opinions that was, oh no, it's not a cyber attack. It's none of those things. That's just a baloney. It just happens to just veer off specifically and kept going into that one main supporting beam, but it's not a cyber attack. That's not what it is. To the other side of the house where our government was very quiet. They didn't say too much. Need to pay attention.
That part.
Exactly. They didn't say too much. They could like, we got to put some money in there to fix that problem really, really quickly, right? Because if the American people or just people in general understood truly what was happening, they would probably, it would just be mad chaos, right? And so we're watching with the water and waste systems and we're watching these things. But again, I'm frustrated because it's sensationalized. It's good news coverage, right? We get it on our phones. We in the cyberspace splattered all over LinkedIn. We like it, we share it. Man, that's really messed up. Somebody got to fix it. But that's supposed to be us. We're supposed to be the ones working with industry to help problem solve. You don't have to be a master in water and waste systems to lend value. You don't have to. What you lend value is you understanding what that entails and being able to articulate the risk to the person that's accountable for whatever it is that they need to do, right? That's what you need to be concerned with. So you need to be watching the news. You need to be fully vested in what's happening in the Middle East. You need to be truly, truly concerned that we have 5 wars. I'm not going to say conflicts because that dumbs it down. We have 5 major wars that's going on in the world right now. You should be very concerned about the fact that diplomacy has deteriorated. You should be very concerned about the fact that young people in general, the rate of suicide has increased 3 times as full in the past 10 years, just based on being online, just the consumption of online. You should be truly, truly concerned about the fact that you don't know what you're looking at, especially in the political arena. You can be looking at a generative AI derived image, or you don't know what's true. You don't know what's propaganda. You don't know what's not. Now, am I saying you need to be paranoid? No. What I'm saying is that you need to be woke. You need to be cognizant. What's happening?
So, question
about this.
Go ahead.
No, you need to.
And I have a question because Joe Sullivan said something at the conference, at the MiC conference, it's a month ago now. But a month ago, that really hit me because he said the CISO is the only executive in the corporation that doesn't have a road to the CEO seat. The CIO, the CTO, the CFO, the chief legal officer can all sit in that CEO seat. So do you think it's our failure as technology, cybersecurity professionals? Because usually we sit under another C-level executive, which just confuses me. So do you think our failure to understand holistically not only just from a business perspective, but many of the things you talked about, you can like and share and say somebody needs to do something about this, but we don't have this.
Exactly.
In general, cybersecurity professionals don't have this
sense of urgency and resolving.
Sense of urgency, or even it's like, oh, that's somebody else's problem.
Yes.
It's not our problem.
Yes.
But who's going to pick it up?
I don't know, because and again, look, I'm all for it, and we I'm talking about Mary and I and our close knit peers are all for, obviously, because that's why MiC exists, right? In supporting and encouraging and rewarding and making sure that all of us, all of y'all, especially ones behind us and coming up and going past us. Yes, get there, do that, because we need y'all to keep our money in the bank so we don't end up on the street somewhere. We need y'all to make sure that we have adequate health care. So if we get sick, that actually the systems are up so I can actually get the surgery that I need. We need to make sure that you guys are where you need to be so that I can at least know when I'm turning on my faucet that I'm having clean water and it's not 2, 3, 4 times as much chlorine in it that can take me out if I drink it or give it to my family, right? We need to be thinking, we need us to get into that arena thinking that way. But the problem that I see is very similar to what I see that has happened in healthcare. Remember, healthcare was the thing that I was in very early on. And I noticed, and all of the cybersecurity folks should understand, what's the greatest risk to critical infrastructure right now. If you want to look at all 17 or 18 of them, it's healthcare sector, right? Because they have the golden keys to everything. If you can get into somebody's healthcare data, you got everything. You don't need nothing else. And looking at how healthcare is right now, it's been so, it's not about curing anything. Nobody wants to.
It's about making money.
It's about making money.
It's about keeping you sick.
It's about keeping you sick. Pharmaceutical companies having a ball. They had a field day during COVID. They had a field day doing all of this, and they're making a lot of money. Nothing against those industries. We need them, right? It's important. But at the same token, cyber has kind of followed the same suit. We've forgotten why we're in this business in the first place. And so we're focusing on things that are purely distractions. And as much as we continue to focus on distractions, we continue not to have resolved anything in the 30 years we've been in the business. Not one thing. We're still talking about passwords. We're still talking about so-called hygiene, which is doing what you're supposed to do in the first place. We're still talking about patching systems. Are you kidding me? We were talking about that 30 years ago. We're still talking about stuff.
We're still talking about the lack of representation.
The lack of representation. Yes,
yeah.
the same stuff, right? And so when you look at this and you're like, okay, the problem in the cyberspace is that we're tunnel vision, very much meeting the stereotypes of being in IT. Still, I remember it started out like that, right? Nobody really cared about this thing, right? This is an IT function, and it still is that way. It's like, well, what do you bring to the table? And one of the challenges that we have is that we still don't understand how to talk to the business. And you know why? Because we don't pay attention. And that's where the sustainability piece comes into play. If you can get yourself to understand truly what is important to an organization, other than just their digital assets, understand the business, go to meetings outside of just cyber and technology, go talk to people and truly understand what moves the company and what they truly care about, you will move mountains when it comes towards influencing and being able to more effectively protect the organizations that you are accountable for. But in the meantime,
you just took my question. You answered my next question. Keep going.
But that's a hard thing to do, right? Because it's not popular. It's a hard thing to do. It's a hard thing to do. And my thing is, if we would take the time to actually think outside the box. I don't want to use that term because it sounds so cliche, but I guess it is. Like, think outside of, understand why you're doing what you're doing in the first place. Why are you a pen tester? Why do you want to be a CISO? Why do you want to be running a SOC? Why? And answer that question truly. And if your answer revolves around, oh, because of the technology or because, I can learn cool things and blah, 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 that's fantastic. But that's not the answer. If you don't understand how your role or where you want to go in cyber and how that actually has an impact on actually protecting the very communities that you are actually serving, even if you don't realize it or not, then you need to go back and think a little bit more and kind of open your eyes and do more research, because this is going to become more complicated. And it's everything that we're running up against, especially in cyber, is not in the book. You are not going to get it from a certification. You are not going to get it in the next technology or master class that's coming out, because guess what? By the time you even recognize what's happening, it's already old. So in order for you to truly be able to understand what's happening, you have to be present. You have to understand what's happening in the world. I'm not the person that loves politics, but you know what? I'm a little bit concerned because whatever happens to one of y'all is going to happen to me. If it happened to the community, it's going to happen to me. So I have to get an understanding, right, of what's happening. But I also got to watch really closely in terms of how do I communicate that to an organization? If executive leadership are speaking about things that I don't really understand, that should be a flag. right? As a cybersecurity professional, if the only thing I understand is the world of my systems, and I understand the approach in terms of how I need to put the controls on and all that, then you're just working very much in a silo and you're not being effective. Because what those executives need is someone to really understand their problem space, but come in with a different perspective. You're coming in with a cyber perspective, and you can apply that knowledge to actually helping them in their decision making. That's what this is about. It's not just about making sure we keep the bad guys out. They already in. It's about how do we ensure that we talk and we have an understanding with the business to help strategically guide them. And no, you don't have to be a CISO to do that. You can be a master of your trade in whatever you're in, from the pen tester to the analyst. You having that type of thought and being able to provide questions and thought leadership, because you know how I feel, everybody is a leader. You can provide thought leadership and you can contribute, is what helps facilitate solutions. You do not innovate and create solutions to any type of problem by working in silo. And in cyber, we actually function that way. Everything we do is in the cyber bubble. When do you see cyber interfacing with any other type of disciplines? Really? Everything we do is just focus amongst ourselves, when in essence, technology runs in parallel with everything that we do. So guess what? Cybersecurity is a pathway against all of that. We should be right there front and center. The arts, entertainment, music, everybody's digital. There is a cybersecurity path to all of those elements. And to me, having that understanding is what enables the business, enables you to be able to articulate and convey whatever it is that you're trying to convey, where the business will receive it, because they're like, man, you actually understand what my problem is. I don't understand the technology I'm using, but I'm leaving it up to you. But you actually understand what it is that I need from a business perspective and what the business cares about, which is saving our behinds and making sure that we keep making money. And you understand that. That's the part where I think we have a lot of opportunity.
Yeah, we do. And I know we have these conversations all the time. So you're just hitting on a lot of stuff, and it's changing the mental state. So of course we have the apprentice group and aspirers that are looking to break into the profession. And my answer to that is the apprenticeship program and its foundational principles of cybersecurity that we cover. But what would you give to your, well, no, let's not go to 7-year-old self. Let's go with what would you tell a newbie out there that has transferable skills? Because our program, of course, we work with individuals that are transitioning from another profession into cybersecurity. So what advice would you give to a younger professional, even an older professional that's transitioning? What's the best type of advice you can give in regards to that journey for them, besides understanding business concepts? Because that will take you far. But yeah,
I think it's more internal focused, because I think that newbie understanding that they already have the innate skills and the competencies to be able to pursue a career is what's most important. That's what's most important, is what you think and how you feel. And the reason why I say that is because the old-fashioned way of saying, oh, you got to have a computer science degree, you got to be the tech wizard working in a closet for the past 20 years, whatever. You have to be extremely super, super technical to ever get in this field. Oh, governance and compliance don't mean nothing. That's just fake security, all the weird stuff that's coming out. The reality is none of that matters. What matters is your analytical skills, your drive, your ability to be able to research, your ability to be able to articulate and be able to identify and see patterns in disparate pieces of information. You do it all the time anyway. And irrespective of whatever your career is, your prior career, as you're trying to go through that transition, understanding that those skills exist, it's about understanding how it can help and complement a new arena. Remember, even if that person, depending on what industry they're in, that particular company, almost we can all pretty much guarantee they're using technology. So if they're using technology, one of the cool ways that you can do it just from an internal point of view is just kind of think it for a second. Well, man, I'm in this company. I'm trying to make a change. I don't like this role. But let me try to understand, like, man, how are we securing our stuff here? What do we have in place? Let me read up on this. Let me join some groups. Let me see what MiC has to offer in terms of, this is the problem space. This is what I see in a trusted environment, of course. How can I leverage what I do? This is what I do in my current role, but I'm seeing like they're not really paying attention over here. How can I apply what I know to the cyber field? And I think having those discussions and also understanding that you already have the foundation to be able to pursue, because that's the biggest thing that I see is that we cut ourselves short, especially when it's something going into a new thing that we don't understand. The reality is you already innately have it already. This is not a hard space. What's hard is because we haven't had equitable access. That's what makes it hard, right? Once we have equitable access, it's all over at that point in everything that we do, let alone in this space, right? Because how we live our life, especially here in the States, and being people of color and how we navigate and adapt to different situations because we have to, is very interesting how you can apply that way of thinking in terms of the cybersecurity space, because it is an environment that is very different and dynamic that changes. You don't necessarily know what you're up against. You have to already assume that you've already been hacked, right? You have to always make sure that, I don't want to say this, but yeah, you have to make sure you're on guard. You got to make sure you have your stuff together, right? It's the same type of insight. So thinking about self first, start with yourself and recognize that you already have the fundamentals. The next steps is understanding what are the resources that I need to get access to so that I can help mature and grow those skill sets. Even if you want to do a Google search, or if you want to do ChatGPT, y'all want to, do that. You can go in there and say, look, this is what I'm good at. I like this, and this, and this. This is my background, blah, 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 blah. I'm being very simplistic, but on purpose. What type of jobs or opportunities in cyber for someone with this skill set? And just look at it and see what it says. And you could be like, I'm not really, I didn't even know that existed. Oh, well, let me do a little bit more research on my own. Again, start with self first. If you can start with self, then it helps narrow your scope in terms of understanding what path you want to take. If you're a person that likes to work alone, right? You don't want to work in no team. You want to work by yourself. You probably don't want to work in a SOC.
Right.
That's probably not the best fit for you, right? You probably want to think about contributing.
Well, some of them have remote opportunities, though. Some
of them have remote opportunities, but it still requires you to work with a team, right? Whether it's in person.
That's fair.
It's that collaboration, right? You got to be able to share information. You got to be able to talk to people, especially in a remote environment, especially in a SOC situation when stuff go down, right? Got to be able to talk to people. If you don't really like dealing with people and you ain't really feeling all that, whether I'm at home or I'm in office, you probably don't want to choose it as a career. So being honest with yourself, right, really helps in terms of narrowing the scope of like where you want to go. And of course, the age-old thing is what you don't know, you ask. I think that's another thing that, again, is self-inflicted. Don't be afraid to ask. I don't have a clue which direction I need to go. What I do, I know what I like, and I want to do this. And leverage the opportunities in MiC. Leverage the opportunities in your network. There's so much free stuff out there and open source information. Of course, making sure you validate, right? Because it's a lot of stuff that isn't going to help you. And that's why it's good to go through MiC. But there's a lot of resources available to you that really starts with yourself first so that you can make better decisions. And you're not just jumping on a roll because it sounds good. Or think it's going to
you're not going after this sir and this sir and this sir. Just because we do. Okay, so we got a question from our brother, Mr. Tyrone Guyton, saying, can you recommend a couple of books, websites that provide some education and context on your two passions, human trafficking of children and sustainability regarding cybersecurity?
Sure. Human trafficking of children. That's tons of information that's out there. You can find everything from the International Center of Missing and Exploited Children. You can find information from ECPAT, which is ECPAT, which is an organization that focuses on child protection globally. You can look at resources with We Protect Alliance. There's tons of resources available in respect to human trafficking. What's a little bit less well known and what, if you have an interest in it, is understanding the impacts of that on rural and marginalized communities. And so that, of course, shameless plug, Protect Us Kids Foundation. Definitely Google and look at that, because there's a lot of work underway, and has been for quite some time, of really trying to be able to address human trafficking, specifically online trafficking, right? Because we think of sex trafficking because that's what gets people's attention, but the reality, online trafficking also includes organ trafficking, as well as sex trafficking, as well as all kind of other types of trafficking, right? And again, technology enables folks to do things even at a broader expanse. So it's definitely opportunities in that. From sustainability regarding cybersecurity, shameless plug again, because it doesn't really exist, right? So Global Cybersecurity Advisory Group, I believe that's globalcyberadvisory.com. We have a slew of resources, and we're constantly adding to them weekly. You can check out the blog. You can also read the website because it's almost like a library within itself, but that was done intentionally to educate and to give you some awareness around what this means. Also, the International Society of Sustainability Professionals is an organization that's been around for a while that provides a lot of information, resources, and they provide certifications in sustainability. And we actually, GCS and ISSP are coming out with actual webinars and modules for the community. So we can get folks in cyber and other disciplines to really get a better understanding of how to apply this methodology and approach to like everyday life and within their work environments as well.
Well, that's awesome. We have 10 minutes. If you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A. There is no, Ken Underhill is out there on YouTube saying we are his heroes, but there's no question. There's no question there. I'm looking at both, just to make sure. But touching on this a little bit, I know, we're coming on time. I'm can ask another question just in case there aren't any questions. As it relates to your own personal journey, what is the most useful tool in your arsenal when you're trying to climb the corporate ladder?
Maintaining a sense of peace in self and my mindset. And I say that because, and Mary, you know this, and I know you have tons of conversations and topics within MiC, in the MiC community. This is a hard space. It's a hard space, and it's not really anything to do with your technical acumen that makes it hard, especially for those of us within this community, because there's so much other stuff that you have to deal with before you even get to being able to apply the technical knowledge. So I think maintaining and learning how to be comfortable in my decision-making, even if others may not understand it. Be comfortable in stepping outside of things that are different than what everybody else is doing. Even if others don't necessarily understand like what direction that is, because that's what makes you who you are, right? And maintaining that sense of self is so important in everything that you do, but especially in this space in particular, because there's a lot of opportunities in cybersecurity, but cybersecurity has a lot of political undertones. You make a mistake or a decision, and it's a big deal, and it affects a lot of people, right? And so you need to make sure that you can keep your stress levels, you can keep those personal board of directors, that support system, the MiC community, hold on tight, right? And keep those lines of communication open, because you're going to need it. And for those who are coming into the field and going through this process, obviously you're a MiC, you have a passion, and you want to move forward in this discipline. Just understanding that your greatest strength is this up here, and keeping that in balance, because you're going to come across so many different scenarios and situations where you're going to have to make decisions that you're not going to be comfortable with, or you're going to have to go along with decisions right, that might go against the grain because you know something's going to blow up. You know, maintaining that your sense of self and having that support system is probably the best thing that I could offer in terms of advice.
And that's kind of sort of what the question is in the Q&A. Tawana asks, "What a impressive journey and illustrious career path. Can you share some of the private dialogue you use to propel you?" And I'm assuming by private, we're talking about. Would you stop?
It should want the private dialogue. She made sure she said private. She's like, I have a feeling there's something going on. See, that's that cybersecurity spidey senses going on. Yes, there's a lot. Yeah, yeah. There's a lot. It's such a wonderful opportunity in so many different ways, which is why I believe for our community in general that we don't necessarily have equitable access because others understand just what type of opportunities this is and how much influence and movement we can make. Being in cyber and truly understanding the role, for me, right, is super, super personal because I realize that this is one of the few places where I can, or you can actually have such an influence across so many different pathways and so many different people, but you also come across so much challenges in terms of sexism and racism and ageism and all of these different things that you're up against, that it can be so frustrating because you just want to do your job. You just want to do the role. And when you get into these environments and you realize that a lot of this is political, they don't want to fix it. They make money off of the way it is. They could care less about the client. They could care less about the consumer. Whatever, we got a whole penalty box full of money for that. If they sue, they sue. Like, this is the way organizations and companies are. And, in cyber, you kind of like want to put your little cape on. You're ready to go in and defend the day. And when you realize, honestly, that's not how it works. It can be very disparaging and make you want to walk away. And so Mary, you and I, Renee, she's not on here, but three of us, we have talked about over the years of the walking away and like the challenges and the sacrifice in the space. But that's not the answer, which is why I'm so proud of you and I'm so proud of the MiC community, because in spite of, you are here and there's such an opportunity for you to just keep pushing and changing. You've already changed it, the narrative. You've already changed it. I mean, what is it? Almost 14, 15,000 members in the MiC community alone. I mean, when you look at that and where it was 5-10 years ago, that's unbelievable, but it is believable because what it shows is that those private conversations, those tears, the anger and the frustrations, because you just want to do and operate at your capacity and you just want to help. You just want to contribute. And when you realize that the world may not necessarily look at it that way, having a strong foundation of like-minded people in a community to support you through that process, that's like the best thing in managing like the hard times and the challenging times, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And for those of you who don't know, the reason MiC exists is because a private conversation at Veda's house, probably about a decade ago.
Yeah.
And what we were going to do to ultimately change the narrative. And this community is a result of my own, and no, my execution, but our vision. Right. And so that's why we're here. That's why we have these sessions. That's why we have the coursework that we have. That's why, right? Because me and Veda and Renee and we got if you see a few things, I'm the wine drinker and Veda's Pilates and Renee is baked goods. So we together have our own individual things that we utilize to get through. But and at the end of the day, it's really about all of those behind us and getting you there
Yes.
um, further, faster. So Tyrone asked one last question, and we're going to take it. It says, "What one red flag should an aspirer be aware of along their career journey?" I don't think there's one red flag,
No, many.
but is I will say, in my own opinion, anyone who treats you and does not value your opinion or treats you less than human, you need to go. That's a red flag. That right there, and that has caused me to walk away from corporate organizations because you're not treating me like I'm human.
Exactly.
And there's only so much that a person can tolerate. And Vita, I'll leave it up to you to finish out.
No, that's about right. That's why folks walked away, right? That's why Mary walked away to find purpose. Vita walked away to live purpose, right? So it's because you can't treat a person that way and expect them to just function. Although, the challenges with us is systemic in the perception of us to serve and to serve others
Mhm.
in a way that's not equitable or humane. And you absolutely, I agree with you 500%. And you can sniff that out the gate. So don't let that dollars that they put on the table and all the convincing in the world, when you see it and you sense it, walk away. Walk away.
Trust
It's
it.
always trusted,
Trust
always
yourself.
opportunities. Even in this climate right now, it's you got
Mm. Thank you so much, my dear friend, for coming on and
you.
sharing your thoughts. As always, it's a pleasure just hanging out with you. Hopefully, you guys out there on that are live with us and on watching us on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. We still trying to monetize. If these 15,000 followers would just follow us on YouTube, we could probably get some passive income for this, but I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it at that. But thank you so much, Vita Woods, for being with us today, and I thank you guys for being with us today. And we'll catch you guys in a couple Fridays, and we'll see you soon. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Bye
Thank
bye.
you.